Top of the morning to you today. It is about 5:30 in the morning. It is Sunday, August 10th, and here I am to give you another edition of Joe's Book Review. Just yesterday, I finished the latest splatter western called Sing Me a Death Song. And let's talk about it for a second. Now, this is going to be the 22nd splatter western that I've done on this channel. And if the genre is basically new to you, welcome. Basically, we're dealing with Western stories that have very visceral and descriptive amounts of blood and gore, to put it mildly. The splatter of splatter Western. If there are scenes of torture, which in this book there are, you will get details of every cut, every flaying. Nothing is left out. And generally, a splatter Western story has some aspect of the supernatural in it, somewhere. Okay? Sometimes it can be subtle, and other times it's critical to the plot. It all depends upon the author's flavor. This novella is the last splatter western that Dead Sky Publishing has released, or Death's Head Press, should I say. It was released on December 10th, 2024. And for some reason, I thought it was the second to last book, because on my shelf, I actually had this in a certain order, which I thought was release order. But I messed up the last two. The other one that is the last one that I thought was the last one is called Hell's Cargo. I'm reading that one next. And that came out in August of that same year. So this one came, this one came out in December. I don't know why I just lost my train of thought there. This one came out in December. Hell's Cargo came out in August, but I'm going to read Hell's Cargo later. Can't tell you why I did that. My mistake. Oh well. And I think this next one I'm going to do is going to be my last one for a while, even though they're not really coming out anymore. Which brings me to my next point. Okay. I'm not even sure if Death's Head Publishing exists any longer. I looked up Death's Head Publishing, and there's nothing new on social media since like November of 24. But I do know that Death's Head is an imprint of Dead Sky Publishing, so I went to look up that. And in their social media, for the most part, it promotes a new book called Fireproof, and like that's about it. Like they're all 100% all in on this one product, from what my horrible eyesight can actually see. And then it was saying that Dead Sky was an imprint of Stygian Sky Media. And they have a website which is under maintenance. But I think that Stygian Sky rebranded as Dead Sky, and now Death's Head is an imprint of Dead Sky. So there's like layers of an onion in this whole relationship, and I just don't see anything being talked about that's going to be released in the future. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say there might be no more splatter westerns released by this publisher anytime soon, if ever. Which is annoying because I know off the top of my head there were 2 trilogies that they were putting out there, and we haven't seen a part 3 for them. The first is Kristopher Triana's Coyote trilogy, but I actually reached out to him, and he said the 3rd book is going to be released under a new banner called Bad Dream Books. I'll put the link down below if you need to find it on your own. And there was a Black Magpie trilogy, which started out with the Magpie Coffin, went to A Few Souls More, but it wasn't until the 2nd book came out that all of a sudden they started talking about it being a trilogy. So no idea when or if we'll see a 3rd version. So now that the current events have been completed, let's move on to this book, shall we? What we have here is a nice little romp in the genre. And I'm not attempting to say anything poorly about the book when I use the phrase, it's a nice, simple little story. Okay? I didn't know what I was in for when I picked this one up. Because when I got involved with knowing about this genre and picking up all the books, a lot of them were already out there. So I got to the point in early 2024 where 3 brand new books were going to be released. And this is my first experience with saying, hey, a new one's coming out. I can't wait. And the 3 that came out in 2024 were Mayhem Sam, which I did a review about that last week. This one here, Sing Me a Death Song. And the next one I'm going to do is Hell's Cargo. So this is my first experience with, hey, there's a new one coming out. I can't wait. And I just didn't know what to expect with this. Especially, with the cover art being the way it is, and about songs. What's going to be horror splatter about that kind of a thing? So I was interested to see what it was going to be about. But like I said, it's a very 1, 2, 3, 4 in order type of story. So you don't have to keep an eye on like that one little detail that's going to be introduced to you kind of like a side point early that they need later on as like the linchpin of whatever they need to take care of. There aren't any whodunit moments or going through one of those like, oh my God, how are they going to get past this one kind of event. It's a pretty linear story, and it takes us from the beginning to the middle to the end in a finely paced way. But what is the beginning, the middle, and the end? Well, we start off simply enough about a bounty hunter. His name is Blue Covington. He's in a saloon of a small town, back to the wall, as much in the shadows as he can make himself. And in comes a man who is like seeking him out to talk to him. He's got a message from his hometown that some marauders have come in and they've taken your mama's farm, which is kind of his farm now because mama is dead, but that everyone knows it as Mama's farm. And he's basically enticing Blue to go home and go into an ambush. And the scene ends with a spectacular show of how Blue's actually in that saloon because there's a bounty over at the bar. And it illustrates some of his methods of his bounty hunting skills and where his mind is, kind of a thing. So basically, if there's posters saying dead or alive, Blue Covington prefers dead. Just easier for him. And he's been doing this long enough that his reputation has gone out in the world. So when you see Blue Covington, if you got anything wrong with the law, you're going to skedaddle out of there because he's just going to kill you. One shot to the head, even if you're not looking, even if your back is turned. But our main character here, Blue, he's been having a little crisis of consciousness for a while. And he decides to hang up his bounty hunting days. And he's going to retire back to Mama's farm anyway. So the fact that he has to go there now and liberate it from marauders is just another step in the journey for him. He's kind of done with his bounty hunting days anyway. And because he's done with his bounty hunting days, as he's traveling and hits the next town, he actually runs in to a guy who does have a bounty on his head, but he swears like he didn't do it. And he decides, I'm not here for him, but I'm going to let him live anyway. He kind of believes him in his he didn't do it because his rant is he was sleeping with the sheriff's wife and the sheriff's wife found out. Therefore, that's why he has a bounty on his head. So they kind of like travel together to Mama's Farm's town as a little cadre that was brought together for the story. And now Blue actually has a companion that might help him get the marauders off of his farmland. Now, while this is going on, we actually get to see what's going on inside the town. The town is called Le Plateau. Because this town's in the middle of its own problems at the moment. Well, there's a saloon in town, as all Western towns have, and the saloon has a small stage. And often you can see dancing girls on the stage doing their thing. Think can dancers, which to them they're cowboys, is what they really want to see when they're in there. But at times, this trio of dudes takes the stage, and they have their instruments, and they sing their songs. And they don't even sing it very well. They just sing the songs. And as would be obvious, there's some whiskey drinking cowboys there, and they just heckle the guys on stage. It's like, you guys get off, bring the girls back. That's all they give a shit about. So what the band would do is they would sing a song to the heckler. And they would sing about how this guy's not going to see the light of day. They would talk about how he's going to die that night, how his eyes would be plucked out, and his genitals would be cut off and shoved down their throat. Just all sorts of mutilations and bad things that can happen to an hombre, they throw in their song. Well, that night, when that heckler went home and they lay in bed, those things would happen to him. And anyone who talked to them on stage, who heckled them on stage, they would get a death song. Sing me a death song. And it takes about a week or so before they realize, hey, you know something? These guys singing on stage are talking about these people dying, and these people are dying. What the hell's going on? Hey, sheriff, go get them. Even though it's like, but they didn't do anything. But the town is like, they're singing the songs, and the people are dying. They must be responsible. And it kind of gets interesting here in the book as we're going along this week, because you do get a couple examples of the people getting the song sung to them going home, them fearing something's going to happen to them, and then it happens. So we get to see the effects of these people being mutilated, killed, bloodied, splattered, blah, blah, blah. Whether it be a person themselves who goes home alone and is awake and this experience happens to them, or even if the guy's got a wife that hears about this, she decides to sit up all night and watch him and keep him company and make sure no one comes in and kills him, but then sees like an invisible presence. I know it's an oxymoron, but she sees something happen to her husband by an invisible presence, just cutting into the body, flaying off things of skin, taking his fingers off, you name it. Because again, this is a splatter western. So we get into the real nitty-gritty descriptions of what is going on. So this goes on for some time in the town until the sheriff finally gets the balls up to arrest the trio. And of course, they sing him a death song from the jail cell. But it's interesting, though, because when the sheriff finally comes to get them, they're expecting this. It's like they've done all this before. Come on, boys. Sheriff's finally come to get us. So it's like, wait. This has happened many times before. They're taking it in stride. What is going on? And then there's the quick trial. Quick hanging. Which, by the way, which I love, exactly brings us to the cover art of these three guys in their nooses. But while they're hung and they heard the next snap and they're choking or whatnot, the guys are smiling on the gallows. And in fact, they start talking back to the townfolk. And the townfolk thought, hey, we're going to hang them. We're going to leave them there. The death songs are going to cease. We get to go back to normal. We can rebuild and relive. But the trio just goes on. And the trio says, hey, we're going to sing a new death song every single night until you cut us down. And of course, they're not going to cut them down. So the three dead men are sitting there in nooses. They start singing the new song, and people in town still begin to die one by one. So, long story short, and enough to keep the spoilers out of this kind of review, Blue comes to town to take back the ranch. The Marauders are identified as actually one woman who's really pissed off at Blue for taking the bounty on her brother. And the Marauders are just this one woman, Minnie, a well-spoken ponce that she has wrapped around her finger, just with her body. and a lunatic who just loves to torture animals, people, you name it. And the story brings us along to a confrontation at the end. And we, the reader, get to watch and we get to see who lives, who dies. There's a subplot of sorts in here as well. It's a lovely woman in town. Her name's Louise, and Blue loves her. And she's also a bit of a palm reader. So back in the Wild West times, you always get that sense of uh, what's the phrase from the Bible? Don't suffer a witch to live. So she's always afraid of herself. She saw that her mother and her grandmother all had like the gift, and they've all been like killed by the townsfolk. So she tries to keep it on the DL. But there are some folks that come to her for her services. But they might be like a sheriff and a priest as well. So they kind of protect her in a way. And she has her part to play in the novel as well, because now she has some kind of foresight and she can help out Blue and she can help out the town with these trio of minstrels and so on. And it just fits in with the narrative so seamlessly that this small section I have right now on her is pretty much all I need to say about it. I mean, like I said before, it's a fairly simple story with just a handful of characters to be concerned about. But there's enough in the pages they're in that the story can really occupy your reading pleasure. Like I said, it's going to be a short one today, so there's not much to really exalt about it, but I don't have much to like shit on it for either. However, being Death's Head Press, there are editing problems. And I'm just so used to them that as I'm reading, I can like earmark my page to say, oh, this is a page where this thing happens. So when I do my notes for this afterwards, I can come and find it easier. So the one item I'm going to talk about, which isn't like misspelling or whatever else, is something I've actually seen once before. In the very first chapter, when they're in that saloon, and Blue's talking to the guy who wants him to go into the ambush, but he's there for another bounty that's at the bar. The guy's telling Blue about the marauders at Mama's house. And Blue knows he was paid to deliver that message. He just doesn't know why or how much. So, on the 5th page of this book, with an unnatural speed, Blue pulls back the hammer and cocks the gun. You didn't come here looking for a drink, you lying bag of mule shit. So again, Blue pulls back the hammer and cocks the gun. So the sentence is exactly the same. And you know the author just moved it, but they didn't delete the old version. It's exactly the same sentence used twice within 4 sentences. And no, I don't think it's one of those pull back the hammer twice kind of guns. And I'm looking for a no prize like Marvel gives out. I mean, I saw the same thing like 2 books back when I was reading Here Comes the Sun. You know, where the guy pulls out a knife out of his boot. And a couple paragraphs later, the guy pulls out a knife out of his boot. So, the author's got to be careful. Then there's a few things that happen that are just editing, spelling, whatever kind of things. You know, page 16, the bartender. He serves the beer and pours the shorts, which I think means he pours the shots, not the shorts. Added an R on that one. Page 48, the town La Plateau. He misses a capitalization in plateau. 133, another misspelling. Uses the word own instead of O. We do owe you one. Typed as, we do own you one. And the final one I saw, page 156, I think they're missing a word on this one. Should have a the in the sentence. You know, Joseph cleared his throat. I'm one responsible for this book, which should have been, I'm the one responsible for this book. But like I said, unfortunately, it's exactly the type of quality that you do get out of this publisher. And because, like I said, I know what's going to happen, I dog-ear the pages because they took me out of the story. They didn't put proper grammar in there. You know, use Grammarly or something like that. My thing is, if you're typing this up on something as simple as Microsoft Word, they usually underline things in either red or green saying, this don't look right. So I can pinpoint them here when I do my review for you. So 20 minutes or so, that's pretty much all I have for you today. This one goes on the shelf. Another splatter western down. One to go. Be my last one for a while. Because I'm actually holding off on Triana coming out with his third installment of the trilogy, the Coyote trilogy. So I want to read all those at one time. So I got one more, and then I'm kind of done splatter western wise for a while. But thank you very much. If you've been here that long, I'm going to pop up the banner. You know what I would ask you to do. Please do it. And otherwise, I'll see you here soon enough. Take care.